I just want to start by saying a lot of people that are really analytically minded love what Taylor Hall's done this year. The metrics and everything he does when he's on the ice, they look good. I like analytics. I love hockey analytics, but when it's not producing goals or wins, it doesn't really matter to me. And at the end of the day, I'm here more for guys that are producing at, fantasy output. And he just hasn't done that at all this year. Not even, at the beginning of the year, just for betting people out there like myself, his shot prop lines were at like 3.5, 4. And he was hitting that occasionally when he played with Jack Eichel. His shot prop lines went down to 2.5 and stayed there. He just wasn't shooting. And the more gifted players like Taylor Hall, especially when you lose in Jack Eichel, they need to be the primary shot drivers on each line that they play for. It wasn't doing what he does best. And at that point, the Sabres got to get rid of him. Now, when you get to this deal, the way I see it going down, and obviously I'm not in the room, Taylor Hall had some say in where he went with his no trade clause. He wanted to go to Boston. The Boston Bruins knew that. It sounded like Boston kind of settled in on a third-round pick for Taylor Hall. They got blown out by the Capitals and decided they needed to make a move. There were other teams trying to get the services of Taylor Hall. I think a couple that he would have considered in Carolina and maybe Vegas. At the end of the day, the Bruins gave an offer that I think was probably the best. There's rumors out there. You're going to hear a million different people saying, well, look what Sam Bennett got from Florida. It doesn't matter because the trade clause is the trade clause. The Bruins win the trade, I think, without a doubt. But the Sabres got back at least something more than I think that was originally on the table for a guy that has an $8 million contract hit in a year where the cap didn't go up. He has not produced, and there's definitely no guarantee he's staying anywhere he's going. So you're getting a rental on a reduced season. If the Bruins go out in the first round, that's going to really hurt, but it's only a second-round pick and not even a prospect anymore in Bjork, just a middling third, fourth liner. So, I think the Bruins at the end of the day, it's a big win for them in a year that they're going for the cup. How many years they got left? So the right move for the Bruins to do, in my opinion, and then we'll kind of get to where he's going to fit in the lines because I have some thoughts.
So let's okay, Bruce Cassidy, what are you doing?
I'm probably putting him with the Krejci-Ritchie line, at least to start, because I think you want to keep that perfection line intact, especially when we get to the playoffs. The playoffs are where everything changes. I think having a guy like Nick Ritchie, who's a big body, really, really great shot. And I think that's what, if anything, Taylor Hall hasn't been able to do is get some freedom out there to produce his shot that he can take. But what he's always done before this year is he's been a top 5 player in taking the puck from his zone and moving it into the offensive zone and starting to play. It was him and Jack Eichel. That's why everyone on the Sabres were like, we finally have play drivers. Like, these are the guys that can maneuver the puck into the zone. If he can do that with Ritchie, I think that could be special. It kind of works out well for him on the left side. They've been bouncing guys in and out. Even Pasternak's been moved down there a number of different times just to try to kind of keep multiple lines going. That's where the Bruins have always been successful, is having third, fourth, and definitely second lines that produce goals. And this year just really has dried up a bit, and that's why they're not winning as much. So I think that that's where you want to put him, at least for now. The perfection line can roll, and that second line can start finding some goals, which I think Ritchie could do that with Taylor Hall services. It's really going to take off.
It's good to hear because they got some tough teams in their division, DJ. It seems like everyone there made a move. Let's start in our nation's capital because Washington made a huge move just before we started recording. Now, it was funny because just before this move happened, I said to you, did Washington do anything? And you just said, they made a minor move here. And then you went, we have a trade. They picked up a power forward from the Detroit Red Wings, and it's about time because I've been saying for a while this guy's got to move. Anthony Mantha's now going to a contending team. How do you see him fitting with the Washington Capitals?
It is. The Anthony Mantha story has been interesting from the get-go. He's kind of one of those guys that when he was a elite prospect, if you will, a lot of people thought like, will Detroit hang on to him? They've made the playoffs X amount of years in a row. Are they going to move off the prospects that they got and try to stay alive? And obviously wasn't the right move and they didn't do it. He has a couple amazing years where he was just a force on a terrible team. And then this year, not very good. He's been benched multiple times, just seemingly out of nowhere. He'll get benched for a game and then the coach will say, he's just not there right now. So I think that situation reached its boiling point to where they had to move him. He still has 4 years left on his contract at about 5.7 AVV. Most of that's backloaded though, so the Washington Capitals will be paying more than the amount of money that the cap is going to be. So that's kind of why they had to move out a couple pieces. Defenseman went to the Devils beforehand. Everyone was kind of like they're going to move. off this guy, seemingly a piece here and then all of a sudden Mantha comes in. I love Jacob Vrana though, going back the other way. He only has 1 year left on his deal before he's an RFA again, but I think that could be a piece that Yzerman was really needed to get Mantha out. They're not a team that I think is going to stay down for long, the Red Wings. I think they'll get back to, being a contender sooner or later. But man, is Mantha, if he could catch what he had again and get back to that form he had. I mean, we're talking about a guy that had, I believe, 25 and 24 goals in 17, 18, and 18, 19. And we're talking about a team that was so incredibly bad that, just the worst team in hockey almost ever in 18, 19. To still have 48 points in 67 games is really a feat when you're playing with guys that are AHL or below quality. So I'm a big fan of what he can do. Is best Anthony Mantha is going to, take the Capitals to the next level for sure. If Anthony Mantha continues the way he's playing now and can't quite catch lightning in a bottle, they give up a lot. And Vrana is a good player, and it could be for a long time. So it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, I mean, where would you, knowing that he hasn't been playing well, would you put him on that top line? Like, where do you think he fits right now in Washington?
Man, Washington's lines have moved around so much. They change their lines almost every game. Where is he going to right now? If we look at the current lines, I'm just going to pull them up. I mean, they're not going to change them after their last game, as they absolutely handled the Bruins 8-1.
Yeah,
so we have Ovechkin, Kuznetsov, and Wilson. I think that stays regardless. That line just really has been clicking. Vrana comes out, Ehlers and Oshie. I mean, you might just put him right there. I'm surprised Backstrom isn't with Oshie right now, but Eller has been really, really hot for them and has been for a while. So, yeah, I think he probably fits in right there right now with Eller, and then Backstrom, if he can get back to form, can move back into that second-line center role. I don't really see any reason. I mean, Mantha is a true right winger. I can't imagine that you put him with Ovechkin on the left side. That just wouldn't make a lot of sense to me. So probably put him right where Vrana was and just roll the lines as is. I think he's an upgrade, but not a huge upgrade. The bigger question for at least me and other daily fantasy players is he going to be on the top power play? I like to think he would be over Kuznetsov, but it's going to be tough to see. I wonder how they're actually going to reform that power play up, because Ovechkin obviously has the OV spot and plays both of the two units. So I don't really know where he's going to fit in there, but either way, they needed to add another scorer to that team and get some more depth. And hopefully, like I said, if they get the Anthony Mantha of a couple of years ago, they got a guy that is a 30-goal scorer in the making.
Yeah, well, you talk about teams that needed scoring depth. Let's go to Long Island, because it seemed like if Matt Barzal wasn't scoring or passing the puck, they weren't doing much offensively. Now, they went to a division rival, not too much far, into New Jersey, and picked up Kyle Palmieri and Travis Zajac. Palmieri, it seems like he's been on the Devils forever. It seems like every year he's on the trade block. He finally finds his way to a new team. The Islanders are good. They're deep. They now got additional scoring depth, guys who can hit, a coach who's been there and won before. What do you think of this move for the Islanders?
I mean, first off, we've already got a little taste of what these guys can do. In their first game out, I believe it was against the Rangers. They won 3-2 in overtime. Maybe that was the second, but it was kind of one of those things where like the trade happened and people were like, are they going to play the next day? And everyone was like, it's a 45-minute bus ride. They're going to go play the next day. What are you talking about? So it was kind of nice for them to go right down the road. But when you lose a guy like Anders Lee, and you're already the Islanders who don't win games by winning 8-1, they win games by winning 2-1. It's a huge hit, because the way Barzal and Anders Lee play together was something that was pretty rare to find. They were really clicking all year. It was going hot. I guess the surprising part was that they put Zajac with Barzal and Eberle and Palmieri with Peugeot and Wallstrom. That was not what people expected. Every single person was saying Palmieri, going right to that line with Barzal. Not the case. So I'm not sure if they're still kind of toying with lines, but when a week ago they had guys like Leo Komarov on the top line with Barzal, obviously something had to change, because you just can't diminish the upside of your best offensive players by putting guys that are clear defensive forwards just to try to squeak out games 2-1 and let that last through the playoffs. That's just not how you're going to get the job done, even in Barry Trotz's defensive system. So it's a big upgrade. I kind of like Peugeot with Palmieri and Wallstrom. Oliver Wallstrom, many Bruins fans or people in that area might remember him as the kid that did the amazing between the leg goal, and you know what I'm talking about on the junior Bruins. Do you know the story about Oliver Wallstrom? I don't know.
No.
It's a clip you should look up. When he was like 12 on the junior Bruins, he did he put the stick between the legs, like dangled it around, flipped it over his shoulder, and then he was like 11. So yeah, he's a kid from that area, and I'm a big fan of his game as well. Both of them are shooters with Peugeot, who also can be a shooter at times. So it's kind of an interesting third line for them, which is kind of it really makes them from a team that was so one dimensional with like a line one clear and a 1B and Bailey Nelson and oh my God, how do you say his name again? Beauvillier. There it is. I always look at his name and don't want to say it right. But Beauvillier, that was clicking as a second line. So now they have 3 lines that can actually play. And then you just got to use Cizikas, Martin, and Clutterbuck as your kind of, grinders. I really like that team a lot. Going into this year, anyone who listens to me or has before knows I'm a huge Ryan Pulock fan. Him and Pelech are just one of the best pairs in the NHL and can really shut down anyone on their own. So they're going to be a really tough team to get out in the playoffs. And I'm excited to see what they can do. But like I said, they took 2 guys in and they put them not where I expected. So always fun to see. And definitely when you're gambling like I do, you got to find out what these players are playing. Palmieri on the top power play as well, which that unit kind of took over as the full, number 1 unit. And Palmieri scored last game. So it's working.
Yeah. Well, Trotz knows what he's doing. He's won himself a cup. I think he's got the Islanders are awesome. They're a team. I mean, I've watched them play the Bruins a couple times this year. They give them fits every time they take the ice. So, they got a much stronger team. And finally, just to wrap out this division, Jeff Carter from LA to Pittsburgh. Those are the 4 teams. How do you think that rounds out the Pittsburgh Penguins?
It feels like there was no way Berkey was going to go to the deadline and not do something. And no one knew what it was going to be. But Brian Burke is Brian Burke, and just getting a guy like Jeff Carter sounds exactly like what Brian Burke was going to do. I don't know how we didn't see this coming before. It makes too much sense. So I like the move. I've kind of this year, Jeff Carter's kind of been a guy that will randomly pop on smaller DFS slates as like a decent value, just because he does shoot enough and was playing in that top power play, kind of bouncing back and forth between the 2 units. So I think there's still some gas in the tank, but not a ton. I don't really think he's going to be much more than your like 12 to 14, 15 minutes a night guy that just can have some offensive upside, but he's not a net negative defensively would be the best way to put it. Nothing that I'm going to lose any sleep over not missing out on, but someone that and a team like Pittsburgh, who obviously with Malkin being hurt for so much of the year and others, I mean, guys like Jared McCann have become like major assets in DFS and fantasy communities. Evan Rodriguez is getting 15 minutes a night. Guys that are just really your like middling, like depth players that have had to step into roles and produce and are. So you got the Gensel Crosby Russ line that's absolutely crushing. And then you have guys like Lafferty and Skeevier, and this guy came out of nowhere as a horror nut. Like these guys that just are nobodies that started the year in the AHL that are just having to play. So anyone is going to be somewhat of an upgrade over them, and just taking away minutes from them. Not saying that they're the worst. Like some of these guys have produced really well and been great. Rodriguez has been great. Like he's definitely earned his spot. Yeah. But I think it's a good enough move. But Pittsburgh's so strapped with cash that it was going to be tough to get anyone too good.
So looking at these teams right now, obviously it might be tough for the Bruins to move up their seeding because right now they're the 4th best team in the East. Washington at the top, tied with the Islanders at 58, followed by Pittsburgh with 56 points. I mean, taking the points out of the way, how would you rank these 4 teams after the deadline?
Yeah, honestly, I put the Islanders 1, Boston 2, Washington 3, Pittsburgh 4. I really don't think the Capitals have as much staying power as people think, just because the goaltending has been so unbelievably shaky at times. I mean, who's their starter? I don't know. I guess Vanacek most of the time, not always. And then Samsonov is been, I'd say, pretty bad. I wouldn't even want to say he's been like somewhat good at times. He's been super hit or miss. So you got a guy in Vanacek who coming into this year was not even supposed to be the backup. I mean, Lundqvist was supposed to be the backup. Yeah. I like his game enough, but there's enough holes in it for me to think that that's not going to fly. I'm kind of a believer that in the playoffs, goaltending becomes the most important thing. In the regular season, it's very important. You got a guy like Cal Peterson who could be winning a Vezina this year if it wasn't for playing for the Kings. But if you don't have it in the playoffs and it slips at all, it's going right out the window. You're out in 4 games. So I think that they're probably just ahead of the Penguins because of depth, because I think the Penguins' offense is pretty much that bad and their defense has been also just very average. So with that being said, I put Boston just ahead of them. And then the Islanders, I do think now take over. I think they have the best tandem in the East by a good margin. That was kind of the question in the East is like, what are the goaltenders going to shake out like? So many teams with guys like, the bottom is very clear. The Rangers were very young. Who was going to be the starter there? So I really think at the end of the day, it comes down to goaltending. I mean, look at the Flyers. Holy crap. We don't even say anything about the Flyers yet. If they don't have the worst goaltending in hockey, the Sabres do. But boy, Carter Hart has been a train wreck. And that's why they're not in the playoffs. Yeah. He has been the worst goalie that's started in the league right now. So, it's that important to a team. I think the Flyers are a playoff team with a goaltender that's kept them out. And that the Bruins come back, and Halak's been hit or miss. This later guy actually been pretty solid. So we'll see what they can do. I think the Bruins still have a question mark there. But Tuukka Rask can come back, which I think he definitely will in a few weeks here. They could be just right back in it again, and they might be able to move up a spot. So I like them a good bit more, and the experience, and adding Taylor Hall. I mean, you don't get a Taylor Hall at the deadline normally for as cheap as they did, but it's a weird year.